Dear esteemed followers, this research was presented to the world several years ago by a Russian researcher named Lotus, which is perhaps the closest correct pronunciation of his name. The original title of the research is "There Are No Forests on Earth." This research, which many channels have relied upon and used as a reference, delves into intriguing topics that invite us to reconsider the world around us. We have strived to rewrite and present it to you in a simpler and clearer manner, without altering the content, neither by omission nor addition, only including some clarifications to illustrate the researcher's intent. And it is worth noting that we have reservations about some of the content in this research, but it is a good contribution. Take from it what aligns with your mind, and remember that everyone is fallible. Keep that in mind well. There are no forests on Earth. When you read this title aloud, even with the exclamation mark at the end, you will think, and every rational person will think, that I have lost my mind. And you will want to show me millions of pictures of forests. Rest assured, this is yet another deception. They are trying to make us believe that this is a forest, while the truth is that you are looking at trees that are only 30 meters tall. You might say this is sophistry and meaningless nonsense. After all, we all know what forests look like, and almost all of us have walked through them. Well, I expect that will be your reaction, and it is both logical and fair. However, after reading or watching this research, such a title will no longer seem strange to you, as it will make you completely rethink your concept of forests. Now, let's start with the well-known image where children see 9 dolphins, while adults see 2 lovers. Quite a significant difference, isn't it? Try to see the dolphins and notice how difficult it is, because the female figures refuse to transform into dolphins for most adults, which is amusing because it's the exact opposite for children. Imagine a single image, yet we perceive it entirely differently. What's more, children and adults cannot exchange their perception of what they see or how they view things. Why? It's very simple. Because the eyes see according to how they've been programmed by the Matrix, but that's not how we can perceive the real world. Over time, our eyes betray us. They've worked to make us blind since childhood, so much so that the real world is entirely different from what we see. We see things through the lens of habit and experience, a perspective that has distorted everything. We've become so accustomed to it that by the age of 30, this perspective protects your mind. But by 40, you would go mad without it. Do you think I'm exaggerating? Well, look at this picture. It's called Mesa, formed by volcanic lava about 200 million years ago when the Earth was forming. Do you think I've lost my mind? Maybe you will too. You'll understand what I mean when we return to this piece of grass later. For now, just remember how we stumbled upon this ancient stump. Sometimes, people try to take pictures of themselves attempting to hug a trunk that cannot be embraced. But think about it seriously. These trees are ancient and rare, all of them documented, monitored, and preserved in sanctuaries as natural memorials. Yet, there's a buzz on the internet about forests, and everyone is asking, why are all the forests on Earth, even in Siberia, not older than 200 years? Where are the giant trees? It's true that people are outraged by this, but I want to look at the problem from another angle, from the poles of the Earth. The intriguing thing is that even Soviet biologists found something strange at the poles. They found an unnatural amount of water trapped as ice and snow, and an abnormal concentration of carbon dioxide in the world's oceans. These unnatural concentrations tell us that a global fire occurred in the past. Using simple math, these scientists concluded that these fires wiped out 99% of the living beings on Earth. Naturally, we all know that living cells are made of hydrogen and carbon. So the polar ice is primarily composed of water from the burning of living organisms in the distant past. Consider this number, 99%. This means that everything that grows, crawls, flies, swims, or runs on Earth is now 20,000 times smaller in size than it was before this catastrophe. 20,000 times. To grasp this number, look at this image. This piece of bread represents humans, plants, and animals. A mere small, pitiable piece on this large truck representing the living beings. I hope you understand that the myth of overpopulation in our current era is nothing but a 100% fraud and nonsense. Biologists have distributed this number across all continents, but it didn't work. Because on dry land, there isn't enough space to accommodate this number if the living beings multiplied 20,000 times. But they didn't factor in the ice and snow. Yet, the truth remains a truth, and this volume of creatures must have existed on Earth. However, as always, a sudden light can come to cast blame on conventional thinking. Forests that are 30 meters tall are like a virus that takes over our minds, especially the minds of biologists, preventing us from finding a solution to this dilemma, where the vegetative area should be much larger than it is. So, if the plants can't fit horizontally to form a convincing space, we must make them fit vertically. Here, we might have a solution to this dilemma. This new theory imagines forests of unimaginable height. And here's the exciting part, we've found these old photographs. They depict the massacre of sequoia trees in California between 1880 and 1920. These trees miraculously survived massive explosions in 1816. Imagine how long it took for these trees to grow to such immense sizes, only for these terrifying men to come with saws and axes. One by one, there were no trees left. But from the size of these severed trunks, we can deduce an equation to estimate the height of these trees. The diameter of the trunk is 3 times larger than the saw that cut it, meaning they were 3 times the size of today's trees. Think about it. Imagine yourself in a forest where the trees are not 30 meters tall as they are today, but 100 meters. These are undoubtedly fantastical forests, straight out of old tales of fairies and nymphs, forests lost due to ferocious beasts. I understand they were just workers, providing for their children and families, and that they were acting under higher authority. But if every lumberjack had refused to carry out these criminal orders, we would have preserved these forests, for their demon masters are far too arrogant to do this work themselves. And so, I will send those who defend these gleeful lumberjacks to a well-known place. Look at this picture carefully. They appear like diabolical bacteria intent on killing the plant composition of forests. As for those who believe the trees were cut and killed only for the wood, allow me to disagree. Trees are not just sources of wood, they are generators of energy, producing constant electricity, oxygen through photosynthesis, and even food. But there's something even more important. Trees possess a network of roots and a program for data exchange, which is why our ancestors had a theory that trees on Earth were programmed to store data in a special information gateway located in carbon fibers. However, I am puzzled as to why these vandals left some of the sequoia trees alive, even though they fenced them off and called them nature reserves. Of course, the guides of these reserves will tell you fanciful tales about these trees, but they won't tell you how these fools in that foolish era cleared our sequoia cover. Well, let's summarize everything. The remnants of the old giant trees have been found, and the polar ice has found its place on the new mosaic. It seems as though everything is clear, but it isn't. No truth is this simple. When we delve into the myths of nations, we find many stories about people, animals, and plants turning into stone. This is natural because paleontologists around the world have found fossilized remains of humans, animals, and plants. There are so many that old museums are crammed with fossilized frogs, clover leaves, lizards, dinosaur pieces, and the like. Frogs and clover leaves are fine, but what about forests? Where are the trees? The old sequoia trees in California don't count because they are made of carbon, which means they don't belong to the Silicon Age. How do I know this? Because they were cut down with ordinary tools, whereas all axes and saws would shatter if used to cut silicon. So, where are the silica trees if those carbon giants don't belong to the Silicon Age? Imagine, we found them. Can you guess where? In North America itself, specifically in Arizona. Many events occur in the Aryan region there. And here's the giant quarry now known as the Grand Canyon, also famous as a park. But as someone with the pseudonym Wake Up Human once said, calling the waste of an old quarry a national park is the height of irony. It's not a national park, but just the waste of a quarry. This is the Aryan city that existed 50,000 years ago, and nothing remains of it but this vortex, around which these savages camped just a meter away. That's the nonsense Wikipedia tells us. And by the way, here are the silicon trees. Allow me to introduce you to the museum under the open sky. Here, in the desert, petrified trees are scattered around, enclosed by a fence, and anyone can visit this circus called the Petrified Forest National Park. In this park, the petrified fossils are not just common, they are unique. While turtles and frogs have turned into pale gray stones, these trees have astonishingly transformed into gemstones. Beautiful stones, aren't they? So, it's time for an assessment. All our forests are young, and their trees do not exceed 30 meters in height. But we've found traces of fairy forests in the Sequoia region of California. Although biologists have replaced them with columns of ice and snow, we've discovered petrified fossils from the Silicon Age and trees made of gemstones. Now, everything is convincing and in the correct order, right? Or is it not? In a perfect world, everything is convincing and in the correct order. But in our world, cursed by hell, nothing is convincing, and nothing is in the correct order. When I was a child and saw petrified fossils on a television program, this question haunted me. How can a frog turn into stone instead of decomposing like any other organic being? Let's see what Wikipedia tells us. Certain and rare conditions must be met for a trunk to turn into fossil wood or petrified wood, the most important of which is that it must be buried in an oxygen-free environment, preserving its organic structure and overall appearance. I believe this is British dry humor, but if it's not, let me try to explain. Scientists say that for a living being to turn into stone, some sudden catastrophe is required, such as a volcanic eruption, a tsunami, or a mudslide that covers the frog quickly, preventing bacteria from turning the body into compost. In simpler terms, for a living being to turn into stone, it must be covered or submerged and then compressed. And according to those we call scientists, the organic tissues, once alive, magically turn into silicon. Remember this equation, and if you've recently buried your pet, hurry and dig it up, because your beloved pet is now petrified, and you can place its statue on the table. Do you want to scold me for this dark joke? Direct your scolding to the official scientific community that sells us such nonsense, because the truth is that a dead organic body has only two options: it either dries out like an insect in a piece of amber, or, the second option, simply decomposes. But organic bodies never turn into rubble, never, ever. This sophistry was invented to hide the truth. However, if the magical transformation from an organic body to stone is a believable lie, but the transformation of wood into gemstones? Here, lies and ignorance become uncontrollable. Tell me how? How can a wooden stick turn into a gemstone? You may not have an answer, but I do. And we will discuss that later. But for now, let's understand what these gemstones are showing us. First and foremost, according to the official narrative, these trees lost an uneven battle against a nearby volcano. Note that this occurred 225 million years ago. This wasn't merely a fire or decomposition in moist soil. Defying all the laws of physics, chemistry, and biology, these trees were magically transformed into precious gemstones. I can almost see David Copperfield nervously smoking in the background. But hold on, these trees weren't simply broken, they were sawed into small, nearly equal pieces. Well then, I'd love to know the brand of the saw used by the indigenous people. I'm joking, of course, but we must conclude that this is not a museum, it's a stage. Someone cut these trees and transported them here, for only a fool would believe that wood could turn into precious stones and jewels. Here's another question. For what purpose did they create this circus with all these scattered remnants of silicon life forms? And did you notice the small size of these trees? They don't even compare to the sequoias in California. But this is a trivial matter. These aren't trees, they're branches. Branches of the colossal silicon trees. These trees were so enormous that an American sequoia beside them would appear as a mere stick next to a baobab tree. And while tourists marvel at these gemstones, no one pays attention to the background, because everything is hidden in plain sight. To understand what I'm talking about, let's revisit that patch of grass we discussed earlier, and let me ask you again, what do you see? A tree stump amidst daisies? No, this is a mesa, formed from a volcanic explosion at the dawn of Earth's creation, about 200 million years ago. Don't believe me? Well, do you believe me now?